So I would like to welcome our attendees to our side event today. I will give just 1 minute to allow everybody to connect and so on. So then we can start with our side event. I would like to remember to our attendees that they can, actually we will have a Q&A session towards the end of the side event. So don't hesitate to ask questions within the chat box that you can find in the page of the side event. Said that, I believe we can a little bit start with the side event. As you can see, our side event is called Water is Coming, a place-based and multidisciplinary lens on coastal adaptation. This side event is co-organized by the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions, the CPMA, CET Agropole Méditerranée in France, and CMCC, the Centro Euro-Mediterraneo sui cambiamenti climatici, as well as by GPI Climate Ocean and GPI Climate, GPI Climate and GPI Oceans. And of course, also by Samuel Cohen-Salmon, European Climate Pact ambassador. I'm very glad to be moderating this session today because the topic of coastal adaptation is actually very important and is key and a major driver to deliver a resilient future. We can actually already see with our own eyes how, for example, coastal erosion, sea level rise are playing a major role within our coasts. We can see, for example, going to the beach year after year, the beaches and the sand are less and less. Therefore, we can already see with our own eyes in our everyday life the impacts of sea level rise, for example. Well, we should not also forget how 40% of the European GDP is located near the coastlines, as well as 40% of the population. Therefore, ensuring that coasts are resilient is, of course, something extremely important to be delivered. When we talk about climate neutrality, we should never forget also about adaptation, and in particular, coastal adaptation. The aim of this side event is to connect the dots between the scientific community, but also the action of local and regional authorities, what they are implementing in the ground in order to deliver coasts that are more resilient, but also to discuss challenges, solutions, and how they can work together. If I might ask to change the slide, please. And I would like also now to thank our guest speakers today, Mr. Kees Logan, President of the Conference of Peripheral Maritime Regions and the Regional Minister of North Holland in the Netherlands, Professor Pinardi from the University of Bologna and co-chair of the Knowledge Hub on Sea Level Rise, and Mr. Cohen-Salmon, European Climate Pact ambassador, representing CET Agropole Méditerranée in France. And as for myself, I'm Francesco Catte from the CPMA moderating the session. And without further ado, I would go to the speeches and presentations of our guest speakers. We'll be starting first with Mr. Cohen-Salmon, who will be showing us with a video and with a presentation 2 examples of coastal adaptation in CET Agropole Méditerranée. I believe we can launch now the first video, and then Samuel will give his speech. Thank you very much, Samuel, for this video. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesco. Good evening to everyone, and welcome to Set Agricole Mediterranee. My name is Samuel Cohen-Salmon. I'm a European Union Climate Pact Ambassador representing Set Agricole Mediterranee during this event. So Set Agricole Mediterranee is a 125,000 citizens urban area situated south of France on the Mediterranean Sea. This is a 14 cities agglomeration centered around the Tow Lagoon, which makes this urban area absolutely unique. The 30 kilometers of coastline of the agglomeration consists mostly of barrier beach, also called Lido, West Lido, East Lido. The video you have just seen was about the East Lido. This shoreline, exposed to sea level rising, is eroding. And since its creation in 2003, Set Agricole Mediterranee is taking a deep interest in the issue of erosion. The first large-scale operation was the protection of the West Lido. This is a beach of 12 kilometers in length and 2 kilometers in width, which closed off the Tow Lagoon via the accumulation of sediment 6,000 years ago. At the start of the 21st century, the Lido had receded dangerously, and the coastal road was regularly struck by winter swells, requiring regular repairs. To preserve this natural barrier and to maintain tourist and economic activities such as oyster farming or wine growing, Set Agricole Mediterranee and the French state have conceived a project of sustainable protection of the Lido. Luckily, the West Lido wasn't touched by urbanization, enabling the drastic solution of moving the coastal road 100 meters to the north, up to the impassable point of the railway line, which also crosses the Lido. The free space left by this strategic displacement of the road had made possible to reconstitute a 70-meter wide beach protected by a range of dunes. Okay, so the new road was built by recycling old materials, and a walking and cycle path, as well as a bus route, have completed the plan. However, the railway line was too close, so the road has not been set back far enough. So a solution of marine protection has been added to the land-based solution with an addition of a breakwater. The principle is that of a trench of 4.5 meters in depth, situated 350 meters offshore to reduce the energy of the swells before they break onto the beach, limiting their erosive effects. The device quickly demonstrated its effectiveness. We have gained something like 12 meters of beach in only 3 years. In total, the work on the West Lido spanned 12 years until 2019, offering protection for around 40 years. And the 55 million euros investment was financed by the European Union, the French state, the Occitanie region, and the Department of Hérault. So now you have a good overview of the protection of the West and the East Lidos of Set Agricole Mediterranee. And now let's travel to another part of Europe, and back to you, Francesco. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Samuel, and for these actually very interesting examples. And now I'm going to give the floor to Professoressa Pinardi, who is going to give us a little bit presentation on the link between climate change and sea level rise, and tell us a little bit more about the Knowledge Hub on sea level rise. The floor is yours. Nadia, we cannot hear you. You are muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Francesco. Good evening, everybody. I was asking for the first slide before. So here we are. This is one of the many initiatives, but maybe the most significant one for coastal climate change impacts, adaptation and mitigation that we have put together in Europe. It is a joint initiative between JPI Ocean and JPI Climate. And next one, please. Why do we need a joint initiative? This is the absolutely latest release of a wonderful dashboard from IPCC latest results on sea level rise and many other indicators of climate change. Here we see in color how unresolved is Europe, and the colors are the blue colors on the Atlantic over the Mediterranean, the North Sea, and you see what IPCC can release. That's very coarse grain, too coarse to resolve the regional local scales. So we have turned the clock, and technology has been advanced. Next one, please. To do something that will go from these global scales to the coastal scales. And here I show an example that we produce in Italy, but Europe is the leading edge of such systems. We have a Copernicus system too that does offer equivalent solutions. So we have new observations and validated models. That's a very important word, validated models. And here is our movie to show you how complex is the issue. Could you please let the movie go? So this is what technology, advanced science gives now in support of sustainable development goals. And these data are open and free, capable of instructing any kind of planning at the relevant scales. Next, please. So in order to match these important innovations with needs of stakeholders, we have established a knowledge hub on sea level rise. And the vision is inform about regional and local scale sea level and extremes in Europe coastal areas at the maximum technological level allowed now, and foster the involvement of policymakers, scientists, engineers, social scientists, and coastal planning sectors. The mission is to provide a periodic assessment like IPCC, but for the coastal and local areas of Europe, where we can find drivers, impacts, and policy options for the major ocean basins around Europe. Our mission is to do so, to have this periodic assessment through the organization of a series of basin-specific scoping workshops leading to a pan-European expert conference on sea level rise in 2022. Next, please. Our governing council is composed now of 9 countries, giving experts from the different fields, going from social sciences, economics, politics, and sea level rise, physics, biology, and ecology, and geology of the coastal area. The national counterparts have composed now 4 task groups, giving names of experts. In the next slide, please. We have chosen to have 4 sort of new working groups looking at the issues. The first task group will be on co-design, involving stakeholders in the relevant issues. The second will be on policy, so interfacing our latest understanding from science to the policymakers, the relevant policymakers. The third will be the science part, and the fourth, least but not last, the outreach, the communication part. Next, please. So our roadmap for the period 2021 to 2023 is, first of all, set up the expert teams, which just now accomplished for the 4 task groups. And then during next year, the beginning of next year, launch a questionnaire to identify countries and stakeholders, organize and hold basin-specific scoping workshops, where we intend to have that co-design that is needed to bring our new products from Europe to be relevant for end users. And then Q3 and 4 of 2023, so in the last part of 2022, we will hold the main conference. And in 2023, hopefully, we will have this new assessment report that will drive new conclusions with high resolution, bigger granularity, bigger resolution where is needed. And then I guess this will be it. Can I have the next slide, please? Yes. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Professoressa Pinardi, for your presentation. I will be now giving the floor to President Logan. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesco. Dear participants, dear colleagues. First of all, I would like to thank Professor Pinardi and Mr. Cohen-Solomon for the very interesting presentation. And I'm glad to take part in today's meeting, not only as president of CPMR, but also as a Dutch national who can see with his own eyes the threat of climate change and sea level rise. Hence the urgency to adapt to climate change. Extreme weather and climate hazards are becoming the new normal. Not only are they more frequent, but they are also more severe. Climate change is here, and we, coastal regions and island regions, are more and more at the mercy of floods, storms, coastal erosions, and an unrelenting increase of the level of the sea. CPMR members are at the front line to fight climate change and to adapt to it. We are glad that adaptation is back on the EU and international agenda as a key component of the European Green Deal and of our recovery. It's our responsibility to deliver a Europe that is climate neutral and resilient. And we need to act now. There is no planet B. A resilient Europe can only be delivered together with regional and local authorities. Every day, we CPMR member regions work to make our coasts more resilient to protect our economies and citizens. As we said earlier today, around 40% of the EU GDP and population is located on our coastline. For us, it is a matter of life or death. CPMR members mean business when it comes to climate actions, as shown by the Regions Act initiative of the CPMR, that maps the contribution of regions to the Green Deal and therefore also to adaptation. As an example, in the Netherlands, the regions of North Holland and Friesland are working on the renovation of the 32-kilometer long Afsluitdijk. This enclosure dam is a primary dike in our flood defense system, damming off the former Zuiderzee as saltwater inlet in the North Sea and turning it into a freshwater lake, now called the IJsselmeer. This dike is almost 90 years old and the locks are outdated. The sea level is rising and the bottom is sinking. The weather will be more turbulent and the discharge of fresh water from the IJsselmeer will be more difficult. On top of that, the function of the IJsselmeer as one of our main drinking water supplies becomes even more important, while nature in a nearby Waddenzee is threatened by climate change. Together with the national government, we are working on comprehensive solutions to tackle these problems. The renewed dike will be higher and reinforced with specially designed concrete blocks that can break the waves during storms. In addition, new sluices will be built together with Fish Migration River to ensure that migratory fish such as sea trout and salmon can swim freely from salt to fresh water. Furthermore, the Afsluitdijk will be a testing ground for innovative and sustainable forms of energy production like wind, sun and running water. In order to achieve this, not only investment are of great importance, but also knowledge. Knowledge is power, as often said. But one can only say that knowledge is the power to adapt, closing the knowledge gap, acquiring more and better data, and data that is tailored and granular is of the utmost importance. Adaptation solutions are to be found with and in these territories. Hence the importance of granular data. No region is the same, neither the problems they are facing nor the adaptation solutions. Solutions must be tailor-made to the specificities of the regions and rely to their expertise and rely on their expertise and strengths. In other words, a place-based approach is to be implemented in the adaptation. In this respect, regions are anchored to their territory, so they are best placed to ensure that actions and policies are in line with the actual needs on the ground. Let me conclude by stressing the important momentum we are at, facing a recovery that must lead to a resilient and climate-neutral future for the generations to come. We all need to work together, from regions to the scientific community, from businesses to young people. Stakeholders' involvement, mitigation and adaptations are all key elements in the equation to deliver the Green Deal. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, President Lohen, for your speech. And indeed, it summarized a little bit also what is the theme of our side event: multidisciplinary lens and place-based approach. And now we can move to the panel discussion. I already have a question for both Samuel and for Kees. I would like you both mention in your speeches coastal adaptation. You mentioned an example, the Asfrudicht, I'm sorry for the very bad pronunciation of my Dutch, and the Set Barrier Beach in the case of Samuel. Those are solutions that actually require infrastructure. And I would like to ask to the both of you if you could provide other kind of examples, maybe nature-based solutions. Samuel, if you want to start, and then I will give the floor to President Lochen.
Okay, thank you, Francesco. Actually, we do have a nice example. But first, I'd like to remind you that oyster farming is the main source of incomes of the area before tourism. And this activity produces waste, a lot of waste. And we are talking of something like 4,000 tons of oyster shells every year. So to dispose of this waste material, we already have a factory which crushes the shells into powder. After that, the powder can be used in many different ways. For example, to build new roads. And now, Set Agropole Méditerranée just signed a partnership with a private company called Geocoral to use this powder to build artificial reef. And this artificial reef will be used as another kind of breakwater at sea, but we also hope it will serve as a sanctuary for marine life. The project is currently under experiment in our territory, and to be honest, we have great expectations. I'm not sure if technically we are talking about nature-based solution. It's more about recycling and circular economy, but for us, it's very important to develop long-term sustainable solution based on our local innovation. So that's our example.
Thank you very much, Samuel. President Lochen.
Thank you, Francisco. One might think that the Netherlands is just about dams and barriers. But the Dutch have been fighting waters and the sea for centuries. But we are well aware that we also must work with the water. And nature-based solutions are indeed very important. I'm pleased that the EU is starting to take more interest in them. In North Holland, we are increasingly trying to find nature-based solutions for water and coastal management. And there is a maximum, and we have to realize that there is a maximum on how we can build our dikes. And building with nature brings several advantages. For example, it offers opportunities to find integrated solutions for coastal protections, bringing stakeholders together and strengthening them by working together. For example, a building of nature is recently completed, the dike of the island of Texel. There is a 3-kilometer long dike that has been reinforced with sand in a unique and natural way. The sandy area will be a dynamic character has been created in front of the current dike, matching the nature reserve and World Heritage Site of the Waddenzee. Choosing sand is a sustainable choice because it is a flexible solution. Should the sea level rise further in the future, the dune barrier can easily be adjusted. This makes the future-proof dike and at the same time enhances the nature of the Waddenzee. And for my region, this project was a great success because we were all able to tackle several challenges with one project. But even more because in this way we were able to listen to the stakeholders and let them participate in the project. Stakeholders who at first seemed to be opposed to each other. For me, this is the confirmation that involving stakeholders is part of the solution to the major challenges we are facing.
Thank you very much to the both of you. I don't know, Professor Pinardi, if you want to comment a little bit on these two solutions in general, nature-based solutions, what is your take on them?
Yeah, well, both solutions that were explained so well by previous speakers are very important. Both the recycling and the circular economy that we have to go toward to, and the nature-based solutions that Holland is mastering in Europe, actually, among the first countries to put themselves into this issue. I have to say that we have recently really understood the importance of such nature-based solutions. We have worked on them, but my point here, and then I'll conclude, is that the power of technology, of digital technology now, is such that can allow to do what-if scenarios that will instruct even better the actions that we have seen in South France and in Holland, meaning that we can try first by virtual reality what is the most important nature-based solution, addressing the issue from many point of views at the relevant scales. So we have now, as you have seen, models that arrive at the scale of the ports, of the coastal areas, and they are also connected to nature-based solutions, seagrass, and different other biogeochemical tracers in the coastal areas. So I think I see a very nice future for science to contribute to nature-based solutions and through the digital world that we are creating.
Thank you very much, Professoressa Pinardi. So now we talked first about solutions. So maybe I would like also to ask a little bit what are the constraints. For example, in the Netherlands, we could say that the Dutch are considered to be the golden standard in terms of coastal adaptation. But of course, there can be also some issues. What further instruments could be needed? What further tools, if I might ask, President Lochen?
Yes, thank you, Francisco. The Netherlands indeed has a lot of knowledge when it comes to coastal adaptation. Unfortunately, climate change also confronts us with many new problems. Last summer, the province of Limburg had to deal with heavy rainfall, which caused rivers to overflow. And on the other hand, the last few years have been seen significant periods of drought, which led to considerable damage to nature, agriculture, but also to our dikes. And in my opinion, the exchange of knowledge is one of the solutions to tackle challenges of climate adaptations. Each region faces new issues, but other regions are often familiar with those issues. I often heard that governments and organizations want to collaborate more, but they are held back by many procedures and barriers to start international projects. The EU has developed many instruments to promote international collaboration, but I don't think they are suitable for the problems we face today. And this is why CPMR started Region Act. We want to make the exchange of knowledge at an international level more accessible and would like the EU to support this kind of accessible initiative. That is what we need right now. Instruments that are fit for a fast-paced society that want to solve the problems right now.
Thank you very much, President Lochen. Indeed, as we said, this is a recurrent theme. We would say knowledge and cooperation. And I would also like to ask the same question to Mr. Cohen-Salmon. In the SETA global area, what are the major shortcomings that must be overcome? For example, what further instruments of funding might be needed? You mentioned, for example, the first project was financed by also the European Union, and in general, what further support might be needed by SETA Global Mediterranean?
Okay. For now, as I said earlier, the work has been done on both leaders, West and East. So we are not in a state of emergency. And I would like to say that we are prepared for the future, but to be honest, it will be a bold assessment. For the future, we need more collaborations. We need more consultation between institutional partners, local representatives, the French state, and the European Union. And as part of this COP26 side event, we are eager to start a new partnership with other institutions like CPM or CMCC, for example. But I think there are many institutions, even across the Mediterranean Sea with North Africa. But at the end, what we really need, what we all of us, what we need, is to be sure that we achieve the Paris Agreement goal of a 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming by the end of the century. If it's happened by the end of the century, that means that we will have 80 years to adapt. But if it happens in 10 years, like we are heading to, we won't have enough time, and no one will. And it will be a global catastrophe, a global disaster. So that's what we want to avoid as a citizen, but as a representative institution. And that's what drives our action every day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cohen-Salmon. And we can see once again, cooperation. Cooperation is one of the words, the most recurrent ones, I would say, a keyword we have today. And Professoressa Pinardi, if I might ask you a little bit also, in the next steps of the Knowledge Hub on sea level rise, what is going to be its next action in particular? How do you plan, if you plan to involve local and regional authorities into the work, bring on their expertise? And of course, if you could expand a little bit also on the sea basin approach that you're going to have in the Knowledge Hub. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the approach to increase granularity in the information, let's say information for the time being, is very much of a frontier issue, a methodological framework that we are developing. So I think that, for the first scale from IPCC is to get the basin scale. The basin scale, that is the regional scale, with the different issues. But then we are not satisfied. It's not enough to go to the regional. And so in the Knowledge Hub, we will go to the coastal. We will go to the local scale. So how to do that? Because stakeholders are multiple, are many, and different needs. President Cheese was saying, sorry about the name, I can't pronounce well, but President Logan, actually. I think that it is clear that we have to take intermediate people to talk to the multiple stakeholders or end users. So we need to focus on social scientists, to ONGs, to aggregation of stakeholders that would bring the message to the capillarity that is completely everything. But it looks like we will try for the first time. I think it is really a unique experiment to really reach the local scale, stakeholders and users, but with a multiple downscaling approach, by taking, a hierarchical system or approach, and getting really up to the local users. So this is experimental. We will see how it works. So the basin scale workshops will be mainly done with the intermediate users, not the real final ones, but the intermediate, to find the strategy to reach the local one and the end users. If I might add one thing, because
Yes.
there was a question about Earth observations, which I really like to on the chat. I think that it is extremely important to maintain the leadership that Europe has now in terms of Earth observations for the coastal area. We have the Sentinel program of Copernicus that is already giving 10-meter resolution data in the coastal area. The point is, we have to develop systems that are readily accessible by many users. And this is an enormous amount of information. And I hope Europe will develop the competitive business to use this data at the local level, meaning through services and advisory companies that will use such data. But Earth observation is really an absolute must in the coastal area. There is no other way to monitor the complexity with the relevant space and time scales.
Thank you very much, Professoressa Pinardi. And thank you very much also for replying to the question and anticipating it a little bit, but also showing us really the importance on how technology and observation is indeed important for coastal adaptation. And I would like now again to ask a question to President Lohen. You mentioned in your introduction, in your speech, the key role that regions have to play in adaptation. Could you expand a little bit more on this, on why they are important to deliver adaptation solutions?
Yes, of course. Let me start by saying that regions have a key role of three main factors. One, they have the competence, and two, they have the knowledge, and three, they are a strategic level of governance in terms of geographical coverage and coordination. Regional authorities have far-reaching competence in the field of transport, energy, and of course climate adaptation. An integrated approach is the key when we talk about coastal adaptation. Climate change is not only causing sea level rise or coastal erosion, but has major impact on key economic sectors requiring for an integrated approach. For example, tourism and fishery are going to be deeply affected by climate change. But also our transport, trade and supply chains, not to mention water management, are going to be under stress, as several sectors must become more resilient. Regional authorities have competences in these areas, and therefore they are at the front line in designing and implementing measures to make coastal lines more resilient. As for knowledge, regions know their territories, their needs and their strengths. Our policies do not come from thin air, but they are anchored in our regional realities. And as for the third factor, the governance, regions can play a bridge role between the national and local levels, fostering policy coordination and cooperation.
Thank you very much, President Lohen. And this actually gives me also the opportunity to ask to Mr. Cohen-Salmon a little bit about the role that SET Aglopol played in the territories workshop that you mentioned before. Given also that, as President Lohen mentioned, regions have a coordinating role, but of course also local authorities have a major role to play in that.
Okay. We are all aware that we need to adapt. And I may say we need to evolve if we want to tackle efficiently climate change. We are talking about housing, you see, along the coastline, economic activities. I talk about oyster farming, but we have also wine growing, and also strategic infrastructure like our industrial harbor just here. So everything has to be reconsidered. And as a representative of SET Global Mediterranean and as a European Union Climate Pact ambassador, I can say that we have the same goal, both locally and at the European Union level. We try to reconcile economic development with the protection of nature. And to be honest, we don't really know how to do it yet. This is the challenge of our time, I must say. And that's why SET Global Mediterranean has been selected by the French state as a pilot coastal area concerning the issues of sea level rising and protection of the shoreline. What will be learned here on our territory, thanks to our experience and our expertise, will serve other territories in France and maybe in other countries in Europe or abroad.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Indeed, regional and local authorities are working towards coastal adaptation, but they're also involving their stakeholders in order to deliver it together. Professor Sapinardi, you mentioned granular data, and if I may ask, what is needed to make it more granular? What is needed to make it granular enough for a regional and local scale?
Yeah, so this is a very good question, and I think that my answer would be to increase the degree of digital representation through the integration of models and observations at the adequate scales. I forgot to say that satellite observations, Earth observations, are actually fundamental to calibrate and validate our models. And we need to do so. Our models need to be available, but they need to be calibrated and validated more than they have been done at the global scales. Because this time we need to give help to plans, to actual plans for action, right? So this new methodology, which is starting from the global scale, going to the coastal, has to use this integration between models and observations, and including in situ observations, so the ones that are taken and which are very fundamental too. Okay, so it is a big digital representation of the Earth that we need, where by increasing our computational power and our observations, we can get better and better reproduction. So you cannot reach only with data the granularity that you need, but integration of models and observations is crucial. Last, I'd like to point out that this is an important decade. Like it was said before by Salmon, it is a very important decade. It is the United Nations decade of ocean science for sustainable development goals. And it is focusing on the coastal area. So all these experiences, hopefully, will bring a new science to become, really mature and helping SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, targets to be achieved. This is the goal. It's really challenging, but we are running. It's 2021-2030. So it's time, very timely, that we meet here and we discuss this.
Very well. Thank you very much, Professor Sapinardi. Indeed, it is time to act now. And on that note, I saw that two questions were made regarding Regions Act. President Lohen, would you like to reply to them? One is a little bit more what Regions Act is, and one is on the knowledge sharing system of CPMR.
Yes, thank you, Francisco. Excuse me. Region Act is an initiative that was launched by the CPMR to map the contribution of CPMR members to the Green Deal in different areas for mitigation to funding, but also adaptation. The measures and strategies collected shown the integrated approach that regions have been implementing as they cover different areas, from water management to coastal tourism to ports and infrastructure. It also shows the important role they can have to ensure that adaptation efforts are not limited to urban areas, but also in rural areas. An overwhelming majority of our regions has indicated that sea level rise, extreme weather events, and water management are the main challenges. These vulnerabilities must be addressed because regions are in the front line of climate change. What is also very interesting from Region Act is the large number of adaptation and climate strategies that's been developed together with other stakeholders, including the scientific and academic community. This kind of action should be supported by national and EU level in order to ensure measures that are tailored to the territories. I do not want to repeat myself, but it is key that adaptation solutions are to be found in territories with the territories, and they must be adapted to their needs. And then specific by the question what Mr. Van den Hurk asked, I would reply with, we don't need procedures and red tape to share knowledge. Climate adaptation is a direct problem and sharing knowledge should be accessible. Region Act is a tool that collects information and data from regions, and CPMR uses the data to make an analysis for our policy documents and position papers. Furthermore, we use it for digital site visits and tell other regions of innovation throughout Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Logan. I see there was a question also from Sanja Rakvic on the International Law Commission. I can ask the guest speakers if they work with it, but given that they codify international law, it might not be necessarily, let's say, the exact place for the question. But if somebody wants to reply, that is the last opportunity. And said that, I would say that if there are no longer questions, we can go for the wrap-up of the session. So what we have seen today, that really water is coming, as showed by Professoressa Pinardi. Water is here. We need to adapt. But we have also seen what regional and local authorities are doing, and they're doing it thanks to the knowledge that is produced by the academic community. That is why it's such kind of event where we share a little bit of thoughts, where we have presentations, where we talk to each other, extremely important, because as we said, cooperation is fundamental. In these moments in which we can gather all together and discuss on what are the problems and what are the solutions are, again, as I said, fundamental. And we said water is coming, regions and local authorities are adapting. And what Professor Pinardi said is the what-if scenario. But something we could say there is maybe not necessarily a what-if scenario, because there is a scenario in which we are acting, academic community, local and regional authorities together, and this link can become stronger and stronger. But of course, we could say that national governments and the European institutions, in our case, as we are based in the European Union, must actually incentivize as much as possible this kind of cooperation that is happening already here today in a very light form. But who knows what can it become if there is a strong input from the European institutions. I would like to close this side event today, of course, thanking you all for your very interesting presentations, for the panel discussion. And I would like to ask you one final question, if you can reply to very, very quickly, on what is the key message you would like to give to the attendees today. If I might start with Samuel.
Yeah, First of all, as representative of Set Agricole Méditerranée, I would like to thank the European Union for organizing this side event. And I would like personally to thank my fellow speakers, and a special thanks to you, Francesco, for the organization also. I would like to, let's keep in mind that every time we are slowing down in our action against climate change, the sea level rising is speeding up. It's the only thing we have to keep in mind. And for us, it's a real threat. So thank you, everybody, and up to the bye.
Thank you, Samuel. Professoressa Pinardi.
So very briefly, much has been said, very important. I will leave the messages that we have to develop a transdisciplinary science during this decade to tailor advanced science-based products to the need of different stakeholders or coastal ocean. So important for the life of our planet. And then that's it. Yeah, I guess this is my hope that Europe will support transdisciplinary science of such as is required by our discussion today. Thank you.
Indeed, thank you very much, Nadia. And President Lochen.
Yes, thank you, Francisco. If I may give a final message for today, that would be, please do not reinvent the wheel. Regions are already acting to make our coast more resilient. And together with the scientific community and local authorities, we are already acting to do so. What must be done is unleash our full potential. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Lochen. Indeed, not only water is coming, but local and regional authorities and scientific community are coming. And on that note, I'll say that we ended on time and that we have concluded our side event. Thank you very much to the three of you for this very interesting side event. And thank you to the attendees. I wish you a great night and dinner.